What is NIPSCO? Well, NIPSCO is Northern Indiana Public Service Company. We're obviously based in Northern Indiana. We're a subsidiary of NiSource. NiSource is a much larger corporation. It spans, let me see, Kentucky, Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Maryland. And in those states, we provide just gas services. But in Indiana, NIPSCO provides electricity and gas. We do electric generation, transmission, and distribution, which means that, as Gary was saying earlier, we have to manage substations, we have to manage generation stations and transmission lines and the EMS systems, the control systems for those managing those transmission lines. And as you can see here on the slides, 3.5 million natural gas customers. That includes the Columbia gas system, which is in those other states outside of Indiana, and then 500,000 electric customers. And we have approximately 8,000 employees. Probably about 2,000 to 3,000 of those are with NIPSCO. And then I work in the operations technology department, which is a further subset down outside of IT. We're kind of like I like to say a small company within a larger company. We treat IT as an untrusted network. We think of IT as the internet, and our systems within OT are highly, they're subject to the CIP standards, as Gary was saying earlier, and we're very careful on how those systems are managed. Let's see here. Okay, we're using Alert Enterprise, like I said, for access governance. Before we started using Alert Enterprise, we were using spreadsheets. And Gary made a really good point earlier, and you really can't be compliant with spreadsheets. There was constant errors in the spreadsheet. So, I do believe it was about 7 years ago. I think it was mentioned up here earlier. 7 years ago, we went to Alert Enterprise, and now everything's handled electronically, and we have, we've reduced the errors in the system dramatically. So we're using it for access governance, access management. We're communicating with, we have in operations technology, we have our own Active Directory domain. Again, it's outside of the Active Directory domain that IT uses. We're also using it to manage our physical access. IT has its own physical access systems for managing access to office buildings and whatnot. We're managing physical access to substations, to generation stations, to secure computer rooms at those stations and at our control centers. We're also using the system to automate our training and PRAs. The PRAs are done every 7 years. The training has to be done yearly. If you don't take your training in your PRA, CIP standard states you lose your access, and of course people lose their access and they're on the phone to me the next day, says, what happened to my access? It happens all the time, especially with people getting their training done on time. User provisioning and deprovisioning. We're interfaced with an HR system. Workday used to be PeopleSoft, and this past year, Alert Enterprise helped us convert over to using Workday. One of the changes we made in that time period, it used to be somebody would be hired in and they would have to wait a couple of weeks before we could get their access. HR wasn't able to process in a timely manner. With going over to Workday now, as soon as somebody accepts the job, they're accepted into the Alert Enterprise system. And now if they leave between the time they start, or if they decide not to take the job, we now have the ability to remove that access immediately. Before, there was always this time lag. FERC 717 compliance, again, it all revolves around the CIP standards, and we've saved quite a bit of money and time. It used to be our compliance department that managed all those spreadsheets, and we've saved an incredible amount of time and effort in regards and by automating the system. The audit and reporting has helped us tremendously with the audits. In fact, we just had an audit here last month, and things went very well. The last few audits have done very, very well, and Alert Enterprise has been a big part of that success story. This little idea of what we're interfacing with. Again, Workday is the driver for the whole system. That's the HR system. We do all our new hires, any terminations, any transfers. The system's totally automated. Any modifications to employee information, that all comes down from Workday. The system automatically processes that data, and like I said, it doesn't require any human intervention whatsoever. Again, we're interfaced with Active Directory. All the online access, obviously, for our systems is handled through Active Directory. All that processing and those accesses, we're trying to get to, we use a lot of role-based. We could use a lot more role-based, in my opinion. And that's an internal issue. We need to move more towards a role-based access mechanism. I'd say it's like 50-50. I think we need to get more to 80-90%. It would make life a lot easier for me. Let's see, the training is now coming from Workday. Again, this is something that was added this past year. It's working very, very well. Before that, it was LMS. I'm not sure if that's PeopleSoft, or I'm not sure what brand that is. Yeah, but it's working really well. I think it works. It's even working better than the old system was. And of course, all our physical security is done through Secure 9000. Again, we're managing access to all the gen stations, all the control centers, and all our substations. All those are subject to CIP standards, so it's very, very important that access is tracked properly in the system to those different locations. Of course, over here it's just a screenshot of some of the role-based access that we have in the system. Our goal is always to have, 0 violations, and we're very close to that, and we've been doing very, very well with that. And a lot of that success is due to Alert Enterprise. And as I spoke earlier, we're able to assign badges through the system. We're able to do, we do emergency disables. If somebody is terminated, we go out and do an emergency disable before the termination even comes down from HR. The manager contacts us, or a manager is able to initiate the emergency disable to start the whole process. And of course, you see the request for enterprise job role. Like I said, we're moving more and more towards a role-based access methodology. It always surprises me with these numbers. Like Gary was saying earlier, we do a huge amount of contractors. It just seems to be the nature of the business. As you can see, there's always a lot of employee hirings, but a lot of those is contractor based. And talking back to some of the history in the past, when we went to Workday, prior to Workday, we were using two different databases, or we were using PeopleSoft for internal management of employees, and we were using, they call it the contractor database. I don't know what it was, but it was something where they fed in the contractors, and then they brought that data together into one database, and then they fed it down to Alert Enterprise. Now, with everything going through Workday, it's a much cleaner process. And you can see that's a lot of hiring for, we're not that large. We're a large corporation, but we're not that large. And that's a lot in a given year. Training reconciliations, like I said, those are all really everybody that has CIP access within a company. So you can see it's a small subset within a larger corporation. A lot of removals. Again, I think that really goes back to the amount of contractors moving through the system. And of course, people leaving the company. We do a lot of internal transfers. Obviously, you can see 584, that's a lot of transfers in here. And then, again, the cleanups is related back to the removal of complete access. And then, of course, there's always a lot of physical access requests coming through the system. And again, that's related back to the contractors.
So are you using Alert Enterprise in any way to secure your, I guess, the SCADA systems?
Yeah, and there's always that argument of, do you just island off all your SCADA systems, or do you leave them interconnected, make it a little easier to manage? And,
right.
You know, there's the good and the bad on both sides.
Right, but you are using Alert Enterprise, and that's definitely
yes. All those accesses are managed through Alert Enterprise. Yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and of course we're tracking all those accesses to stay CIP compliant.
Super. Okay, great. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and there is a question on the WebEx as well. Sorry, on the Zoom. So I am curious about your background check process. Do you manage entire background check in Alert Enterprise?
We manage the dates in Alert Enterprise. And what I mean by that is the background check provider, we don't have an interface to them. It would be nice to have an interface to them. But I think the vendor, and actually Navjot worked on these systems originally. The vendor didn't have that capability at the time. So what we're doing is we're getting the background, or the compliance department is getting the background check, and they're manually inputting those dates. And we have other systems too we have manually managed systems. And what I mean by manually managed systems, we have other systems that don't have electronic access controls. So, you know, they have their own user access systems, and those are managed through Alert Enterprise also.
Sure. Thank you. And Jim, do you want to speak about the roadmap we are speaking, where we can automate these as well? And on top, as we plan to increase the job role automation adoption and the intelligence aspect, like what if people are not using their access in the right way? And that amounts to insider threat. So what are the plans at NIPSCO for those?
Well, first of all, I think we got a project in the books for next year to go to the next release. But we are putting in a new EMS system now, but it still is kind of an offline control system. It's using Active Directory, but you know, you also have controls behind that. You know, Active Directory gets you there, but the rights behind it are manually managed within the system. So we are tracking all those accesses in the system. I don't know if that really answers the question, but I mean, yeah, any access within operation technology is definitely managed through Alert Enterprise.
Okay. Sure. And there is another question. So that's about Alert Enterprise. I mean, you're running on-prem, that is right. And the question is, do you have physical servers, or you're planning to do the virtualization of that infrastructure?
Yeah, we've had this question on other applications also. Everybody wants to go to the cloud, right? No, we're still planning on staying physical. We are physical today, and we're planning to stay physical right now. I've had coworkers in compliance say that some companies, CIP really doesn't like cloud. Am I right in saying that, Gary? I mean, and I guess some companies are moving to cloud, and they're just. I've heard this comment. They're budgeting for the fines. Am I right in saying that? But
Yeah. All right. Thank you. I think that's all the questions from Zoom. Jaspreet.
Jim, thank you very much for the presentation. One thing I wanted to share with you, very interesting fact, that Michael Asante, I don't know if you remember him, he was the CSO of NIPSCO many years ago. He passed away a couple of years ago. So he was the first CSO who inspired us to really work on the utility sector. So we met at RSA event, very, very nice guy and obviously very smart. And then he was also the CSO of NERC. So we met. He said, Jaspreet, I'm very impressed with the work that you're doing in the aviation sector and everything. He said, you should pay attention to power utilities or the utilities, because we have our substation in the middle of nowhere. Nobody goes to substation for fun. You go there to fix a problem. If somebody is there without a work order, why would they be there? If we see a relay configuration change, nobody's there, that could be a potential. That's for sure is a cyber attack. There's no way for us to tell today until we connect those silos. He said, this is your opportunity, you should work. And then, so everything we did, we validated with him. And he always said, oh, this is good, this is not good and all. So lot of our success, we owe him a lot. We all owe him a lot. He was an amazing guy. And one of his quotes, I remember, he said, okay, when we have an incident at a potential substation, we don't know whether we send a guy with a gun or a guy with a wrench, because this could be one of our very hardworking employee, contractor, maybe made a mistake. And the last thing you want to do is to show up with a gun. That's not a good reward for hard work. On the other hand, it could be a disgruntled person who is there to do damage. And the last thing you want to do is to show up with a wrench, because this person could have a gun. So he was so insightful. So even when he became the CS of NERC, we were always invited to present. So what I wanted to say is we owe you so much for our success. So thank you very much.
Thank you. One thing I did forget to mention earlier is the picture there of the generation plant here. That's going to be our last coal plant. And it has nothing to do, it's just kind of interesting trivia. We're going all wind and solar and hydro and natural gas, but in 2 years, that plant there was built back in the 1920s, and it's going to be the last one to go here. So that's where the industry is headed, and even more distributed, and even more stations out in the middle of nowhere, and now we got a larger area to manage.
So one more thing to share with you. There's an event in Chicago, because you are based in that area. It's a SAP for utilities. This event is, I think, second week of October, where all utility customers are invited. We'll be happy to host you if you like to join, because we are going to obviously, we are going to mention the story of our relation with Michael Asante and all. Love to have you join us if you like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give him a round of applause.